American record labels, traditionally the gatekeepers of global pop success, are facing an unprecedented challenge. For decades, their dominance rested on controlling distribution channels, radio promotion, and large-scale touring infrastructure. However, in the digital streaming era, the industry has shifted toward platforms that reduce geographical barriers, giving international acts opportunities to compete directly with US-based stars. Jungkook is a prime example of this transformation. His solo releases have demonstrated that he does not require the backing of a US label to chart high on Billboard, dominate Spotify streams, or trend globally on social media. This development poses a direct challenge to the traditional power of American labels, and it explains why they now view him not merely as a potential collaborator, but as an essential acquisition. One of the most significant reasons American record labels are panicking is Jungkook's ability to navigate the streaming landscape with a level of efficiency that even established Western acts sometimes struggle to achieve. Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube have made it possible for fans from diverse markets to directly influence global charts. Jungkook's singles such as 7 and 3D quickly climbed international rankings, driven by organic engagement from fans around the world rather than localized promotional campaigns. In doing so, he effectively bypassed the need for traditional US label strategies, which typically include coordinated radio play, press tours, and exclusive media appearances. This independence highlights a broader structural change in the industry. Artists no longer need to be fully embedded in the American system to achieve global visibility. For labels whose profitability relies heavily on signing and controlling top-performing acts, this trend raises alarms. Jungkook demonstrates that the value chain is shifting toward the artist-fan relationship, supported by technology, rather than being dictated solely by the industry's traditional intermediaries. BTS's legacy amplifies the urgency surrounding Jungkook's solo career. The group's achievements, including selling out stadiums worldwide, breaking Billboard chart records, and cultivating one of the largest fandoms in music history, set a precedent that individual members can build upon. Jungkook, often referred to as the Golden Maknae because of his all-around abilities, has particularly benefited from this foundation. His activities are not perceived as isolated experiments, but as extensions of BTS's global trajectory. For American record labels, this creates a dual sense of opportunity and threat. On one hand, securing Jungkook could offer unprecedented access to the BTS fanbase, known as ARMY, who are highly engaged and globally dispersed. On the other hand, if they fail to secure him, labels risk watching an artist generate massive revenue streams entirely outside of their networks. In an industry where market share is fiercely contested, such a scenario is unacceptable. This explains why multiple labels are reported to be competing aggressively for his attention. Beyond music, Jungkook's impact extends deeply into the commercial sector. His partnerships with brands like Calvin Klein have illustrated his ability to elevate global campaigns in ways that resonate across demographics and cultural boundaries. In fact, industry analysts frequently point out that his brand endorsements often create measurable spikes in sales and online traffic. For American record labels, this commercial influence is not simply a side benefit. It is a central factor in assessing an artist's value. Music labels today are not just distributors of songs, they are also managers of intellectual property, image rights, and brand synergy. The fact that Jungkook is capable of driving consumer behavior on a multinational scale makes him one of the most valuable figures in contemporary pop culture. Labels view this as a direct asset. His music career would not only generate revenue through sales and streaming, but also unlocks secondary income streams through integrated marketing strategies. This dual advantage intensifies the competitive environment, making labels more desperate to secure his signature. A critical tension exists between Jungkook's demonstrated independence and the control structures typically imposed by American record labels. Jungkook has already proven that he can operate effectively with minimal label interference, supported primarily by HYBE's infrastructure and his own global fanbase. This autonomy complicates the efforts of US companies, which traditionally thrive on exerting significant influence over production choices, release strategies, and touring schedules. From Jungkook's perspective, aligning with an American label may not necessarily provide benefits that outweigh the limitations such a contract could impose. This imbalance of power creates further anxiety among US executives, who realize that conventional offers might fail to entice him. As a result, some labels are rumored to be crafting unprecedented deals, offering higher degrees of creative control, larger revenue shares, and tailored global strategies to appeal to him. This represents a departure from industry norms and signals how disruptive Jungkook's presence has become. Another dimension of panic arises from how Jungkook's success places pressure on American artists themselves. Traditionally, US singers have dominated the global pop landscape, but the emergence of Jungkook challenges this dominance. His ability to achieve chart success without relying on US-based promotion creates uncomfortable comparisons for domestic stars who depend heavily on the infrastructure of American labels. This shift raises questions about the future of US cultural dominance in music. If a non-Western artist like Jungkook can command global influence independently, then the authority of American labels is diminished. For executives, this is not merely a matter of signing one artist. It is a matter of safeguarding the relevance of their business model in an era of decentralization. Hence, their pursuit of Jungkook is as much about self-preservation as it is about potential profit. Beyond immediate revenue opportunities, Jungkook offers long-term strategic value that American labels are eager to secure. His youth ensures that he has many productive years ahead in the industry, and his versatility as a performer spanning singing, dancing, and production positions him to adapt to shifting market trends. Labels recognize that acquiring Jungkook is not just about capitalizing on current hype, but about ensuring relevance for the next decade of global pop. The panic, therefore, stems from the fear of exclusion. Missing out on Jungkook means conceding a significant portion of the future music market to competitors. Whether those competitors are other American companies, international labels, or even independent platforms supported by fans. In a globalized environment where music consumption is borderless, such concessions could have cascading effects on market share and brand prestige. The logic is straightforward. While digital platforms democratize music distribution, mainstream media still plays a role in legitimizing artists to broader audiences, particularly in the US. Labels hope Jungkook may view this as a valuable addition to his already expansive global presence, making collaboration worthwhile. For American record labels, the risk of failing to secure Jungkook extends far beyond losing one artist. It represents the possibility of losing relevance in the most rapidly growing segment of global pop. If Jungkook continues to achieve global dominance independently, it will provide a template for other international artists to follow, proving that US labels are no longer essential for global success. This risk carries both symbolic and practical consequences. Symbolically, it undermines the narrative of American cultural supremacy that has historically positioned the US as the epicenter of pop music. Practically, it means diminished market share as artists from other countries increasingly bypass US intermediaries. In such a scenario, American labels would face mounting pressure from investors and shareholders demanding explanations for declining influence in a diversifying industry. Looking at historical precedents, similar moments have occurred when global music shifts disrupted existing hierarchies. For example, the British invasion of the 1960s challenged American dominance, with bands like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones forcing US labels to adapt. In the 1990s and 2000s, Latin music and reggaeton carved out significant global audiences, reshaping market priorities. Today, K-pop represents the latest wave, and Jungkook stands at the forefront of its evolution into a permanent global force rather than a passing trend. Unlike earlier waves, however, the current transformation is occurring in an era where digital platforms weaken the control of traditional labels. This means American companies face a more formidable challenge. They cannot rely solely on domestic radio or distribution monopolies to maintain dominance. Jungkook's ability to chart without these mechanisms illustrates this point vividly. If American labels manage to sign Jungkook, the terms of his contract could set a precedent for the industry at large. Artists are increasingly aware of their power in the streaming era, and Jungkook's leverage could push labels to normalize contracts that prioritize creative freedom, flexible revenue splits, and global strategies tailored to artist needs. Such shifts would significantly reduce labels' ability to enforce rigid control structures across the board. Conversely, if Jungkook resists signing with an American label, the precedent would be equally powerful. It would signal to other artists that bypassing US companies is not only possible, but also potentially more advantageous. This could accelerate the decentralization of global music power and force American labels to adopt more artist-friendly practices across their entire rosters. The term panic is not merely metaphorical in this context. Industry insiders report that American executives are increasingly concerned about the optics of being sidelined in one of the most significant artist pursuits of the decade. Their anxiety is not only about revenue, but also about prestige. Signing Jungkook would reinforce their relevance in the global marketplace, while losing him would serve as a very public reminder of their diminishing authority. This psychological factor is important because it influences decision-making at the highest levels. Labels may be willing to make unprecedented financial and structural concessions, not purely out of rational calculation, but also out of fear of appearing outdated in a rapidly evolving industry. A unique factor complicating US labels' pursuit of Jungkook is the sheer power of his fandom, ARMY. Unlike traditional fan bases, ARMY functions as a decentralized promotional network capable of mobilizing streaming campaigns, purchasing strategies, and social media trends at a global scale. This collective action has historically propelled BTS and its members to record-breaking achievements, often without reliance on traditional industry structures. From the perspective of American labels, this represents both a threat and an opportunity. If they secure Jungkook, they gain access to an unmatched promotional force. If they fail, however, they risk further demonstrating that fandoms can independently achieve outcomes once thought possible only with industry support. This dynamic raises fundamental questions about the evolving role of labels in an era when fan communities can essentially replace traditional marketing mechanisms. It is also important to recognize that the panic is not uniform but competitive. Multiple American record labels are vying for Jungkook simultaneously, creating an environment where each company fears being outmaneuvered by rivals. This intra-industry competition drives bidding wars, extravagant promises, and rushed strategies, all of which contribute to the sense of panic. Executives are aware that securing Jungkook would not only bring direct benefits, but also deny competitors the chance to capitalize on his success. The fear of losing ground to rivals intensifies the urgency, making negotiations increasingly complex.